Escape Pod, episode 650. Some Things I Probably Should Have Mentioned Earlier, by Laura Pearlman.
Hello, and welcome to Escape Pod, your weekly science fiction podcast. This week, we bring you a live recording from Worldcon 2018 of Some Things I Probably Should Have Mentioned Earlier by Laura Pearlman. This story was originally published in Mothership Zeta in May 2016 and was also reprinted at Cast of Wonders. We are pleased to have Setsu Uzume as our guest host for this episode. Setsu's commentary was read live at Worldcon, and that recording will follow this week's story as usual. Laura Pearlman's work has appeared or is forthcoming in Shimmer, Flash Fiction Online, Intergalactic Medicine Show, and a handful of other places. She has a sadly neglected blog called Unlikely Explanations, and a Tumblr of things her cats have dropped in their water bowl. When she's not writing, doing software development, or wrangling the aforementioned cats, she reads slush for Escape Pod. You can find her on Twitter at Laura's Bad Ideas. Setsu Uzume is the assistant editor at Podcastle. They spent their formative years in and out of dojos, studied Taoism and swordplay at a monastery in rural China, and is now learning how to shoot arrows from horseback. While they have dabbled in many arts, only writing and martial arts seem to have stuck. Now, get ready to act like a human, because it's story time.
Some Things I Probably Should Have Mentioned Earlier by Laura Pearlman. Dear Kevin, I'm sorry I waited so long to tell you this, but I really hate your vacation cabin. Everything about it creeps me out. The sound of crickets at night makes my skin crawl. They sound like impending doom, like a critical piece of equipment being worn down by friction, or 1,000 tiny voices, hoarse from screaming, reduced to a raspy warning chant in some ancient language. The crickets aren't the only problem. The smell of so much wood in one place makes my eyes burn. And is it really necessary to throw pine cones into the fireplace? Are the burnt wood fumes not overpowering enough? I used to lie awake at night fantasizing about finding whoever came up with that idea, grinding them up, feeding them to the crickets, and then gathering up the crickets, stuffing them into the fireplace, burning the cabin down, and watching from a safe distance. Upwind, of course. Do crickets even eat meat? You probably know. You grew up with all this. That's why you're comfortable with it. I'm not. To me, it's alien and disturbing. I wish I'd told you this the first time you took me there, right after we started dating. But your friends were having such a good time. I wanted to be the fun girlfriend who liked what everyone else liked. It must seem strange that I'm bringing this up now when neither of us will ever go back there. I mention it because saying I loved your cabin set off the chain of events that led us to where we are today. It wasn't the first lie I'd told you, of course, but the others were just my cover story. I wish I'd been honest with you then. I wish I'd had the courage to tell you who and what I am. I wish I'd shown you images of the different shapes I'd taken before committing myself to human form. I wish I'd been able to make you feel the joy and freedom that comes with flowing from one shape to another and the profound sense of loss I felt when I gave that up. I wish I'd been able to share what life was like on the ship. It was a total immersive experience. We spoke human languages, ate human food, and molded ourselves into closer and closer approximations of human shapes, with human form instructors as our guides. We read your literature, tapped into your networks, and watched your videos. We received our cover stories and fashioned our human personalities. One of the hardest things to master was food preferences. They're just so arbitrary. Remember the time your sister came over for dinner and we made chocolate fondue for dessert? We started with apple slices, orange sections, and strawberries. Then Janice wanted to try dipping something salty, so I brought out the saltiest fruit we had, a jar of olives. Oops. I seem to mess up a lot during meals with your family. I'm sorry I laughed at your uncle at that first Thanksgiving dinner. I know you wanted me to ignore him, but information gathering is my job. I just couldn't keep a straight face. If he only knew, my people are far more illegal and far more alien than anyone he was ranting about. And believe me, we're not here to steal anyone's jobs. I won't go so far as to say that I should have told you our plan. Not our complete plan. But the research phase is scheduled to continue for another 73 years. We're nothing if not methodical. And I could have just said we were here to learn more about you. I should have told you at least that much when I found out I was pregnant. I honestly hadn't believed that was possible. And then I remembered something I'd read during the journey to this planet. The ship was stocked with most of your classic literature, including a story about a husband and wife who exchanged gifts. He sold his watch to buy her a hair accessory. She sold her hair to buy him a watch accessory. It was supposed to convey irony, I think. For a long time after I read it, I thought human hair stopped growing in adulthood. Otherwise, the story lacks symmetry. The husband is permanently deprived of his watch, but the wife's hair will grow back with no effort on her part. I thought perhaps you and I were like the characters in that story. Maybe this wasn't an interspecies pregnancy after all. I'd spent the last 4.5 years deceiving my apparently human spouse into thinking I was human. Maybe you'd been doing the same. The more I thought about it, the more certain I became that this was true. I began to make preparations for the traditional Strelerian pregnancy announcement ritual, pared down for just the two of us. I planned a feast of guinea pigs and salamanders, the closest things I could find to our traditional delicacies. I thought we'd break the rules just this once and gorge ourselves on live meat. At the same time, just as a formality, really, I collected hair and cell samples while you slept and took them in for analysis. I repeated the tests 3 times, and the results were devastating. You were totally and undeniably human. Dr. Tran says we were able to produce that tiny zygote because my human cell mimicry was so accurate, and it was able to survive because human stem cells are almost as malleable as ours. I should have told you all this gradually throughout the course of the pregnancy. I had so many opportunities to do so. When you asked why I wouldn't even consider your sister's obstetrician, I could have told you everything and explained that Dr. Tran was the only Strelerian physician in the area. But what if you didn't believe me? I convinced myself at the time that it would be better to wait for the ultrasound. We'd watch together, and you'd see the baby stretch and contract and reshape itself. As the day of the ultrasound approached, I became more and more preoccupied with my own fears. What if there was a human fetus inside me with one of those enormous human baby heads? I've seen how you people give birth. I began having nightmares about one of those things bursting out of me. I was awash in a sea of fear and regret. That's why I forgot to tell you that I'd rescheduled the appointment. I can't begin to tell you how relieved I was to see the images of our perfect little angel flowing into an ovoid, an almost cube, and an adorably lopsided dodecahedron before returning to her resting spherical form. I'm sorry things were so tense when my relatives arrived right before my due date. They've never approved of this marriage. My parents hated the idea of a human raising their grandchild. 3 of them wanted to kill you outright, The others just wanted me to leave you. The only thing they agreed about was how irresponsible I'd been. Getting pregnant, getting married, even the way I'd made decisions back on the ship. To be fair, they were right about that last bit. I don't know, you pick one for me is probably the worst possible answer you can give when asked to select a gender. Eventually, they reached a compromise. They concocted an elaborate plan for me to fake my own death, leave the country, and raise our baby alone. They arranged everything, new passport, plane ticket, apartment, even a new wardrobe, and wrote a new cover story for me. I refused to go along with it. I was sure our love was strong enough to withstand this challenge. Half of all marriages end in divorce, and I was determined that ours wouldn't be one of them. I should have planned a better distraction for you when I confronted my family. Leaving you alone with my parent adjunct, Uncle Roger, was a mistake. He's not as bad as your uncle, but he does love to talk, and he tends to forget some of your more nonsensical cultural taboos. I should have warned him not to tell his war stories, and especially not the parts about feasting on his fallen enemies. Seriously, what's wrong with that? It's not like they're going to be any less dead if we left their bodies to rot. And as I tried to explain, we maintain proper hygiene, eating only healthy people we've slain in battle, not anyone who's died from disease. Arguing with you about that was a mistake. That's valuable time I could have spent telling you about my background and what to expect with the baby. And then I went into labor, and it was too late to say much of anything at all. Still, I was sure you'd come around once our baby was born. A powerful love for our offspring is something our two species have in common. I didn't expect you to freak out at the sight of a few baby teeth. Yes, they appear within minutes of birth instead of however long it takes for your kind. And yes, they're longer and pointier and more numerous than you're accustomed to. But that's a perfectly natural phase of infant development. For the next couple weeks, she'll be flopping around, all teeth and digestive tract, eating everything in sight to support her neonatal growth spurt. She's so adorable. And clever, it looks like she's developing venom sacs. Only about 15% of Strelerian babies have that instinct. Her grandparents are very impressed. Goodbye, Kevin. I can see now that you'll never be the kind of parent our child deserves. I'm putting this in a letter instead of speaking to you in person because I don't want to subject our baby, or let's face it, myself, to the escalating anger and, frankly, xenophobia you've displayed ever since my parents showed up. I'm sorry it's come to this. I'm sure you understand why we can't let you go. I know the basement can get a little chilly, but you shouldn't be there much longer. I hope you'll find some comfort in the fact that, although you won't be around to help raise our child, you won't have failed her completely. You won't nurture her, but you will nourish her. Tonight, when her teeth have completely hardened, you'll have the honor of being her first solid meal. Some of my love, Lissa.
So, for the last 4 weeks, everyone I know has been shouting, "Tribe, tribe, I can't wait to be with my people. I need time with my people. It's expensive, but I'm going to take the days off of work no matter what." And for the most part, after some hiccups and false starts, that has happened here at Worldcon. We're all here. Fans, pros, humans, aliens, and all 4 of the Escape Artist casts, we're here together to celebrate Escape Pod's incredible nomination. But that phrase, my people, our people, keeps coming up. And its actual definition is still kind of nebulous. We work and we play together. We hope and complain together. We celebrate the cool stuff and support each other when disaster strikes. But the stories we tell and the lives that we lead are inseparable. And conventions like these are where we can speak familiar language and share our crazy hobbies and argue about the practicalities of basement keeping. And this judgment-free zone, we can be ourselves. We can do our thing here. At least that's how it's advertised. And whether you're wearing a Mass Effect t-shirt or doing a full group cosplay of your favorite starship's crew, there's always something more there. There's some part of ourselves we're still afraid to show. The same social pressures exist here as they do out there. And we still fall back on the rules, masking ourselves and mimicking what we see around each other in order to be accepted, either in subtle ways, like Strillerian stem cells matching just enough to make a half-human baby, or in performative ways, like putting a false horn on a real unicorn to make them see the unicorn. A lot of us are a little awkward, and these mimics keep the social machine running smoothly, but if something's wrong, that same protective shell becomes the barrier. One party has to keep up the deception past the point of exhaustion, and the other party doesn't have a chance to fix things and create a more welcoming space, and nobody's happy. But what if we dropped the mimic? You might be an orc, but you don't have to live in Mordor. You might be a stormtrooper, but you can escape the Empire. Maybe you'll have trouble mixing with elves and rebels too, but you won't know until you try. Places like this, Worldcon, Podcastle, Cast of Wonders, Pseudopod, Escape Pod, this is where the unexpected combinations flourish. It's not our people distinct from your people, it's our people including your people. The more we blend, the more we challenge each other, the more we share the vast range of our experiences, the greater our possibilities become. So if you're here today, at this con or not, listening now or years from now, and you're thinking about what you should have said, maybe it's not too late to show up as you are. Thanks.
We would like to thank Setsu and Laura for participating in Escape Pod's live panel at Worldcon this year. Escape Pod is a production of Escape Artists Inc. and is brought to you with a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives license. Don't change it, don't sell it, do go forth and share it. Escape Pod relies on the generous donations of our listeners. If you enjoyed our story this week, consider going to escapepod.org or find us on Patreon as EA Podcasts and vote for more stories about misunderstood aliens. Our opening and closing music is by Daikaiju at daikaiju.org, and our closing quotation this week is from Neil deGrasse Tyson, who said, quote, "If an alien lands on your front lawn and extends an appendage as a gesture of greeting, before you get friendly, toss it an 8-ball. If the appendage explodes, then the alien was probably made of antimatter. If not, then you can proceed to take it to your leader." Thanks for listening, and enjoy your auditory adventures through time and space.